Hi, I'm Timothy Miller, and welcome to our series on the Joseph Code. In my personal quest for the truth, I found that the story of the real Jesus of Nazareth was a mystery wrapped in an enigma. However, I also found clues. Little did I know that my system of belief concerning Jesus and Christianity was about to be turned upside down. Welcome to Part 5 of the Joseph Code. As noted in the previous video, the genealogy of Jesus as offered by the author of Luke reveals an odd pattern of repeated names when arranged in columns of 14. The most prominent and repeated names are also tribal names, the names of the most prominent family lines in Israel's history. The names Joseph, Judah, and Levi all have messianic lore associated with them and represent the tribal lineage of 3 of the 12 sons of the Hebrew patriarch Jacob. The story found in Genesis 37 recounts the jealousy that arose between Joseph and his brothers. Joseph's brothers, as the story goes, sold him into slavery and gave his father, Jacob, his coat after they had dipped it in goat's blood, leading Jacob to believe that the boy had been attacked and killed by a wild beast. Joseph ends up as a slave in Egypt, but through a number of trials and hardships, eventually finds himself highly favored by the Pharaoh and becomes the vizier of Egypt, second only in power to the Pharaoh himself. Joseph is eventually reunited with his family and is credited with saving them from a severe famine by giving them the best land in Egypt. Among Joseph's brothers are Levi and Judah. The descendants of Levi would later become the priests of Israel. The descendants of Judah would produce a line of kings, beginning with David. As we discussed in the previous video, although popular Jewish lore insisted the Messiah would come from the lineage of the tribe of Judah through David, there were also traditions that spoke of a Messiah descending from Joseph and Levi. As we examine the genealogy of Luke and the positioning of these names, more clues come to light. The Bible is full of numeric symbolism. There are 10 commandments, the 12 disciples, 12 tribes of Israel, the 14 generations noted by Matthew, the 40 days of Noah's flood and the 40 days in the wilderness involving the temptation of Jesus, 7 days of creation, 3 days of Jonah in the belly of the whale, and the 3 days Jesus spent in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. As we will see, the positioning of the names in this genealogy is not accidental. All the repeated names, Mathat, Joseph, Judah, Levi, Melchi, and Mattathiah, are symbolically positioned. When I first noticed this pattern in 2003, I didn't know what to make of it. My studies were challenging my belief system. By applying the methods one might use as an investigative journalist and examining the information available from varying viewpoints and sources, I was faced with the probability that the real story of Jesus of Nazareth had been overwritten in the centuries following his crucifixion. However, I also found that there were clues that had survived from the original story. The problem I faced was that the clues I found were pointing to something outside the realm and teachings of Orthodox Christian belief. In examining the pattern of names, the name Joseph appears as the dominant name, as it is repeated 3 times and appears to be deliberately positioned in the form of a triangle. In sacred geometry, the triangle is highly symbolic. To the Chaldeans, it represented the light of life. To the students of Pythagoras, it was a reflection of light, health, and wisdom. To the Egyptians, it represented beauty and fertility. In numerology, the triangle is associated with the number 3. The triangle is highly symbolic of the triune or Trinity. It can also be used to describe the life cycle of birth, life, and death. The condition of man, in body, mind, and soul. The family, father, mother, child. The sun, life, heat, and light. It can also be used as a symbol of physical or esoteric boundaries. the sky or heaven, earth, the three-dimensional realm in which we live, and the lower elemental world. It would seem that the repeated names that appear within the Joseph triangle are the key names. The pattern is geometrical, esoteric, and numerological. Their positions when assigned a number are, in the first column, 2, 3, 4, and 6, which equals 15. In the second column, we find the repeated names in the positions 1, 2, and 8, which equals 11, a master number in numerology. In the third column, the names occupy the positions 2, 3, 5, and 6, which equals 16. The sum of the numbers is 42. 4 plus 2 equals 6, which is the number of man. As we examine the position of the repeated names within the Joseph triangle by column, in the first column, the numerical positions can be reduced to 6, which is the number of man. In the second column, the total of the positions of the names equals 11, which is the master or Joseph number. In the third column, the position of the names can be reduced to a 7, which is the number of perfection. As it just so happens, the names Joseph, Judah, and Levi appear together in the third column of names. As I studied the pattern that was showing before me, I found it curious that Melchi was the only repeated name that fell both within and outside the Joseph triangle. In adding the positions of the name Melchi, we come up with 4 and 8, equaling 12. 12 relates to divine government, perfection, and completeness in numerology. It is symbolic of the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 disciples. 12, the 1 plus 2 in numerology, can be reduced to a 3. 3 signifies perfection and completeness. Jesus predicted he would rise on the third day. His ministry lasted 3 years. 3 also represents the triangle in numerology. And as discussed in the previous video, the pattern suggests that Jesus was the product of a triune messianic bloodline. As we examine the position of the name Joseph in this genealogy, we find that the total of the Joseph names equals 13. In numerology, this is reduced to 4. 4 represents the number of creation, the sun, the moon, the stars, and seasons. It can also represent the world, completion, and realization of power. 13 represents the number of Jesus and his disciples, the number of Jacob and his 12 sons, and is also symbolic of cleansing, purification, death, and renewal. In examining the positions of the names Joseph and Levi, as we have seen, Joseph can be reduced to a 4. Levi holds the third position in the columns on the left and the right, equaling 6. 4 plus 6 equals 10. 10 reflects the 10 Commandments and symbolizes perfecting and completeness. 10, when reduced by the rules of esoteric numerology, is 1 plus 0 equaling 1. 1 is symbolic of unity and primacy. It is the first of all the numbers. It is symbolic of the sun, the center and life-giving force of all things. The names of Joseph and Judah are linked together twice in this genealogy. When this appears, in the middle column and in the right column, numbers can be reduced as follows. In the middle column, the names occupy the first and second positions, equaling 3. In the right column, the names occupy the fifth and sixth positions, equaling 11. Adding the two together, we come up with a total of 14. 1 plus 4 equals 5. 5 is said to be the prevailing number in nature and art and symbolic of grace. The 3 pictures completeness, though to a lesser degree than the 7. It is symbolic of the Trinity, and 11 is the master number. If we apply the rules of esoteric numerology to all the places where these two names appear, again, we come up with 4 plus 7 equaling 11, the master number. If we apply the rules of esoteric numerology to all the places where the names Joseph, Judah, and Levi appear, we have 13 plus 7 plus 6 equals 26. Reduced by the rules of esoteric numerology, 2 plus 6 equals 8. And 8 is symbolic of that which is above the natural order, higher than the limitations of nature. It is the number of new beginnings. If we examine the middle column and the names Joseph, Judah, and Melchi and the positions they occupy, we have 1 plus 2 plus 8 equaling 11. In biblical numerology, 11 can have a positive or negative aspect. In esoteric numerology, it is a master number and is not reduced. It can, as it appears here at the center of the triangle, represent the union of the microcosm and the macrocosm. It is the number of Joseph, who was betrayed by his brothers and the eventual rescuer of his tribe. Joseph was the 11th son of Jacob. The name Mathat, as it is presented in this genealogy, always links to the name Levi, and its positions can be reduced to 4. It appears as the second name in the left column and the right column. It is a number of creation, sun, moon, stars, and seasons, the world, completion, and realization of power. It also happens to be the equivalent of the sum of the numbers of the positions of Joseph in this genealogy. The name Mattathiah is a bit of an oddity, for it is the only repeated name that does not appear within the Joseph triangle. However, it occupies the 7th and 13th position in the left column. 7 plus 13 is 20. Reduced by the rules of esoteric numerology, 2 plus 0 equals 2. 2 can mean division, or it can mean a double witness. In other words, 2 witnesses. We should mention that this pattern does not appear unless the names are arranged in columns of 14. I did this following the pattern set by Matthew, who claimed 14 generations from Abraham to David, 14 generations from David to the exile in Babylon, and 14 generations from the exile in Babylon to the Christ. In comparing the genealogies, I arranged them in columns of 14, and it was only then that the pattern appeared in Luke's genealogy. But there is a significance to the number 14. In numerology, it is a multiple of 7, the perfect number. 14 is important as a double of that number and signifies a double measure of spiritual perfection. The number 14 can also represent the concept of deliverance or salvation. At this point, we might do well to go back and supply an historical backdrop for what we appear to be seeing here. We'll start in Genesis with the blessing of Joseph. The blessing of Joseph by Jacob is recorded in Genesis 49 verses 22 through 26. Joseph is a fruitful bow, even a fruitful bow by a well, whose branches run over the wall. The archers have surely grieved him, and shot at him, and hated him. But his bow abode in strength, and his hands were made strong by the mighty God of Jacob. From thence is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. Even by the God of thy father, who shall help thee, and by the Almighty, who shall bless thee with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that lieth under, blessings of the breasts and of the womb. The blessings of thy father have prevailed above the blessings of my progenitors unto the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. They shall be on the head of Joseph, and on the crown of the head of him that was separate from his brethren. The story of Joseph, who was sold into slavery and believed to be dead by his father due to the moral failure of his brothers, has strong messianic overtones. The esoteric pattern of death and resurrection is very prominent in the story. In examining the history of Israel, 1 Kings chapter 11 verses 26 through 40 informs us that due to the unfaithfulness of Solomon and the sanction of the worship of foreign deities, the kingdom was torn from the tribe of Judah and the house of David, and 10 tribes were given to Jeroboam from the tribe of Ephraim of the house of Joseph. From that point on, the kingdoms of Judah and Israel were divided. In these accounts, a prophet named Ahijah approached the young man Jeroboam and prophesied that the Lord was going to give him 10 tribes of Israel to reign over as king. Because Solomon sought to kill him, Jeroboam fled to Egypt and remained there until the death of Solomon. This is strangely reminiscent of the tale told by Matthew in his account of the flight of Joseph to Egypt after the birth of Jesus due to the supposed death threats of Herod the Great. Like Jeroboam, who remained in Egypt until Solomon died, according to Matthew, Joseph remained in Egypt until Herod had died. The continuing struggle over which of the two bloodlines, that of Judah or Joseph, should hold the prominent position is evident in the biblical text. We find in Psalm 118 verses 22 and 23 that the stone which the builders refused is become the headstone of the corner. This is the Lord's doing. It is marvelous in our eyes. This passage is often cited in the Gospels as a prophecy concerning Jesus. In the light of Genesis 49, it can also be said that the stone that the builders rejected was Joseph, as there seems to be an odd insertion in the form of a commentary in the blessing of Joseph that reads, "From thence is the shepherd, the stone of Israel." We find in Psalm 78 verses 67 through 69 the opinion that Joseph was rejected, as it reads, "Moreover, he refused the tabernacle of Joseph, and chose not the tribe of Ephraim, but chose the tribe of Judah, Mount Zion, which he loved. And he built his sanctuary like high places, like the earth which he hath established forever." But we find in 1 Chronicles 5:2 a varying opinion. For it states, "For Judah prevailed above his brethren, and of him came the chief ruler, but the birthright was Joseph's." In Ezekiel 37 verses 16 through 19, we find these passages. "Son of man, take a stick of wood and write on it, belonging to Judah and the Israelites associated with him. Then take another stick of wood and write on it, Ephraim's stick, belonging to Joseph, and all the house of Israel associated with him. Join them together into one stick, so that they will become one in your hand." Ezekiel was to show the sticks to the people and declare that the Lord would join Judah and Ephraim, or Joseph, together into one stick. This represents the ultimate compromise, but in the ensuing chapters we find the view that the house of Judah was still regarded as the dominant one of the two. It is evident that whoever was responsible for the crafting of the document that appears as a genealogy in the Gospel of Luke had a messianic viewpoint that was outside the mainstream of contemporary Jewish thought. It speaks clearly of a triune messianic bloodline. The position of Melchi in relation to the Joseph triangle speaks of two kings or kingdoms, one below and one above, one earthly and one heavenly. It also seems to reflect the position of the so-called King's Chamber and the subterranean chamber of the Great Pyramid of Giza. It also appears that the union of Joseph and Mary was sanctioned by two priestly witnesses who were not close blood relatives, as the positioning of the duplicate name Mattathiah seems to suggest. The name Mathat also appears to be linked to the tribe of Levi, and one of the few names that appear in both the genealogy of Matthew and Luke. Whoever this man actually was is lost to history. The name Mattathiah first appears in 1 Chronicles 9:31 and is associated with the tribe of Levi. In 1 Chronicles 25:21, a Mattathiah is listed as the head of the prophets or singers and musicians assigned the 14th lot in the service of the tabernacle under the rule of King David. We have already noted the importance of the number 14 in relation to these genealogies. As it relates to the blessing of Joseph recorded in Genesis 49, Joseph was evidently symbolic of the gateway to the heavenly kingdom, the blessings of heaven above. Judah was symbolic of the gateway to the earthly kingdom, the blessings of the deep that lieth under. Levi was the joining point, the point of union between the two, the blessings of the breasts and of the womb. As we have noted previously, the Gospel of Luke links Mary to the tribe of Levi. Furthermore, the blessing of Joseph is found in the context of the 49th chapter of Genesis. 4 plus 9 equals 13. The sum of the positions of the name Joseph in Luke's genealogy also equal 13. As we have noted, 1 Kings chapter 11 contains the story of the 10 tribes of the kingdom of Israel being taken from Judah and given to Ephraim or Joseph. In the middle column of the Joseph triangle, the name Joseph appears in the first position. The sum of the position of the repeated names in the middle column is 11, a master number and the number of Joseph, the 11th son of Jacob, Israel. In the next video, we will attempt to remove the gloss from the New Testament text and get closer to the truth concerning the man known as Jesus of Nazareth.